President Trump's Supreme Court nominee Neil Gorsuch goes before the Senate Judiciary Committee on Monday. If confirmed, Gorsuch would be the youngest member of the Supreme Court, filling the vacancy left by Justice Antonin Scalia, who died last year. Gorsuch was a classmate of President Obama's at Harvard Law School and has been described as politically to the right of Justice Scalia. For the past 11 years, he's served the Court of Appeals in Colorado. Jeffrey Rosen is president and CEO of the National Constitution Center, which was established by Congress to disseminate information about the Constitution on a nonpartisan basis. He's a professor at George Washington Law School and has written lots of books about the Supreme Court. He joins us from Philadelphia today. Nice to see you, sir. Thanks for talking with us.
It's great to be here.
Appreciate that. So you know Neil Gorsuch personally. So let's begin with how you would assess he is planning and preparing for Monday's hearing.
I imagine he is reading lots of opinions and congressional statutes, and he's rereading all of his own opinions, and he's also preparing to respond to questions, especially from Democrats, about the constitutional philosophy of Justice Scalia.
So where does he stand, do you think, in relation to Scalia?
Well, as you said in your intro, some statistical analysis has suggested that he might be to the right of Justice Scalia on certain questions, especially involving government regulation and the president's power to regulate the environment or the economy. But in other areas, Judge Gorsuch might be more likely than Justice Scalia to check President Trump. One area where they were both really pro-individual rights is Fourth Amendment searches and seizures. That really affects ordinary Americans' lives. Can the government surveil our telephones, engage in mass data surveillance? Can it grab our iPhones? Both Justice Scalia and Judge Gorsuch, as a lower court judge, have said no, not without really good reason. So there's just one example of how both of their approach to the Constitution can actually favor individual rights.
If he strictly construes limits on federal and presidential power, how do you assess how he might think about presidential tweeting or even or presidential executive orders? So I know you laugh, but I think it's not irrelevant.
It's not irrelevant at all. And actually, the question of what he would think about presidential tweeting is really important. James Madison, who's one of Judge Gorsuch's heroes, believed that the president should never communicate directly with the people. That was the worst thing, Madison thought, because it would lead to demagoguery. So my hunch is that Madison, and probably by Gorsuch as well, might think that the idea of the president tweeting at all is a really bad idea for the protection of the rule of law. But the executive order is a tough question. As you know, that's being decided right now by the lower courts. And there the big question is, do you just look at the text of the law, which in its second incarnation doesn't refer explicitly to religion, or, as you suggested, do you look to the president's extrajudicial statements on the campaign trail where he said, I want a total Muslim ban?
If Judge Gorsuch was in fact confirmed, talk to me a little bit about the tone of the court as a whole. He's pretty tight, Gorsuch, with Justice Kennedy, and Justice Kennedy not so tight with Scalia. That could actually change a dynamic on the court, couldn't it?
Kennedy had an ambivalent relationship with the right wing of the court. Judge Gorsuch is very close to him. He clerked for him. Kennedy admires him. And also, Judge Gorsuch is an extremely kind and gentlemanly person. He's warm, he's collegial, he's a you could call him a mensch, as it were. So it's very possible that could change the dynamic on the court. Kennedy might be more likely to come around to the conservative side if Judge Gorsuch brings him over there.
Final question for you. Do you get the feeling, I mean, as the nation is clearly more polarized and politicized, do you feel like the Supreme Court is also becoming that same exact way, or maybe already is that same way?
Chief Justice Roberts hopes not. It's hugely important to him that citizens look at the court as something above politics and not just a group of 5 Republicans against 4 liberals. And his vote in the healthcare case was an example of his effort to make the court appear to rise above politics. And most of the court's decisions are unanimous, or nearly so. In the less high-profile cases, there's a huge rate of agreement. But it remains the case that on the big hot-button issues that everyone's paying attention to, religious liberty, affirmative action, voting rights, campaign finance, and possibly the future of Roe v. Wade, these are questions where the court is divided 5-4. The long delay that led to the non-confirmation of Merrick Garland didn't help matters. So there's a danger that the court will appear to be really political, but I think that both Chief Justice Roberts and Judge Gorsuch will be very attuned to that and are going to try to avoid making the court look like a political institution. And I think they're going to try to work with the liberal justices to make that happen.
Jeffrey Rosen, nice to see you. I, too, am looking forward to a very wonky conversation. I think it's going to be kind of cool on Monday.
It's going to be constitutional heaven. Citizens should tune in and learn a lot about the Constitution.
Words maybe never said before. Constitutional heaven. Thank you, sir.
Absolutely.
Nice to see you.
Thank you.